Oh, sorry. Yeah, I hear you. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. I'll let everyone know.
And those of you tuning in, we'll be starting in about 10 minutes officially. I actually have to step away, so I'm kind of leaving the stream running a little early so that as everybody comes in, they can go ahead and start the meeting without me, and then I'll be joining in as soon as I can. I'll be a few minutes late, but I wanted to make sure that we had this up and running and recording and all that. So there'll be some dead air for a little bit, and then people coming in, and then should get going in about 10 minutes. Thank you for your patience.
Hello.
Yo, what's up?
Not much. Oh, hey, it's you. It's been a while.
Yeah, I was on vacation.
Oh, for like a month? That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, now it's like 2 weeks. But yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, okay, yeah. Well, that's still pretty cool. Did you go anywhere?
Yeah, we went to some ski resort called Taos in Utah, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, cool. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it was fun. Most of the city was shut down though, because COVID.
Oh, okay. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, but it was planned way in advance, so
Oh, gotcha.
yeah, it was more like if we didn't go, just waste a whole bunch of money.
Yeah,
But if we did go, wasn't a whole lot to do.
yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yup.
Oh, this week's been super chaotic on my end.
Oh yeah, you've been trying
Yeah.
to figure out school and stuff.
Well, no, I have like a teacher, like I have a few teachers that are doing this, but one in particular, they think school started the week before it actually started.
Oh man.
So like he's giving us assignments, one of those like project, like senior projects. He's like, you will apply to my company. This is your number one priority. Like I am your job. Like he's just being so antagonistic. I'm like, dude, like it's a class. Like,
Yikes, man.
yeah.
Oh yeah, Hawk's already live or whatever, but he has to step away because he said he has something to do, so he's gonna be a little late. But he started the recording anyway.
Oh,
The stream. Yeah, I've been in here a while.
Then we'll wait maybe like 5 minutes just to make sure we have everybody.
okay.
Did he say where he was going, or is he just working on something?
Nah, he didn't say. He just said he had something to do, so he wouldn't be around when we normally started. So he just started early, so that we'd at least have or be live when we started the meeting.
Hello.
Hey,
The,
Trevor.
Sorry, I'm a little late.
no worries, we haven't officially started yet. We're live, but we're waiting to make sure we have everybody before we get going.
I apologize if I yawned a lot. I spent the last few days going from spending 9-hour days working on homework.
Reminder to everyone to make sure that you log in.
Yep. What are we waiting for now?
We're just making sure everyone was in. I guess we can go ahead and start. Hawk is currently away from screen. So we had basically on the docket for today, we were going to be discussing with Hawk the decision we'd come to on the Minecraft clone, and also running work block of Firetop Mountain. So we're gonna kind of skip ahead to some of the topics for discussion that we had. The first is the wait for the objections. So as a recap, if any of you guys missed the earlier meetings we'd had after break, we are allowing players to object to decisions made by other players. But we're trying to discuss how to handle these objections, because if we had been talking about a 30-second wait time. So if you don't object within 30 seconds after the decision is made, then it just assumes you're not objecting and we move forward. The issue with that is that means that there's a possibility that you will have to wait 30 seconds after every single decision in the game, which would really drag out the game and break immersion. So the suggestions we had brought up when we first started talking about that was we can have the option to flag more like riskier, controversial decisions, and then only allow players to object to those. We suggested to assign risk ratings to choices and bring up the objection options based on a set risk rating number. And then we also talked about being able to activate or deactivate the objection or the wait time in settings. Do we have any other thoughts on how to handle objection?
When you object, maybe this would fix the immersion thing. Maybe we could have their characters say like a short line or something. Maybe we would keep immersion. Not sure. It'd have to depend on what we make them say. Possibly it would fit the you know, the style of the game they're playing. So it's like if it's like a medieval one, we can have it themed like that. If it's like a more modern one, we can have it themed to something similar to that.
Like if it's like a gumshoe or like a present day, like you can spit like a 80s style one-liner, like not, you know what I'm saying, something like that, just like a something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just to help with the immersion, I guess. If that's something, if we decide that that's one of the main reasons why.
Would that lead to splitting the party of this objection system at all?
We had talked about having them basically like sit out the consequences of the decision. So the example we had been using was that when we were running work off the Firetop Mountain, we had an option of if you wanna, like, you walk into a room with these two goblins bring a tour. Your options were to leave the room immediately, find goblins, or join in torturing the tour. And the decision was made to join in the torture, and it was like, who wants to object to that? Because it's like a morally gray area of decisions, we wanted players to have the option to be like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so essentially the people who objected, I don't think we'd actually gotten to the point of what happened to them, but we had discussed having them just like, oh, well, they're out in the hallway for whatever happens next.
Okay, so they're still there, air quotes, they're just not participating in the other actions.
Right, so it would be
Okay, that
like,
makes
I don't
more
want
sense.
to do that so they aren't on the butt end of whatever, if anything, bad consequences happen because of that objection decision.
That would also work if they objected to like a good or a positive interaction that happens later. If they like objected to it, they would have to sit that out as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
How is everybody?
Good.
Stressed.
What?
The school started a week early, I guess.
Oh.
Because reasons.
Reasons.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Well, so glad you're all here. We will be starting to get an influx of new people here any week now. We're going through the interview process. We have, between all the different positions, we have around 200 applicants in our Odoo queue. We had about 400 or 500 in our LinkedIn queue. They've been weeding out the people who weren't serious by making them have to respond and fill out a second application on our site so that we see who's really serious about this. And that works pretty well to save the headache for our admin staff in doing the interviews. And so now John and Danielle and Kate and the other and Nicholas are just trying to book as many interviews as we can. I think the limit is about 12. Wednesdays is generally when we do most of the interviews, and that's about 12 on those days is the upper limit. And we've generally found that about a third of people no-show for their interviews. And I've had that problem this whole process for years. That's about the same ratio. About 1 out of 3 people just will no-show for an interview when they're online. Even when they were in person, I still had about 1 out of 5 people would just no-show for an interview for these volunteer positions. I think that's part of it, is there's no money in it, but so it's rude. It's unfortunate. I wish people were had more consideration than that, and it makes it really challenging to book our time. But we're doing what we can. We're probably gonna have to add a second interview day per week just to try to catch up on this huge backlog. But we're finally getting the administrative positions we've needed. We're getting a couple of volunteer coordinators. We have one who's in Germany now, but is from Nairobi, maybe some part of Africa, and a very nice fellow. And one of our GM trainees out of California has also joined as the volunteer coordinator team. Again, all these things we try to do as teams so that no one person gets overloaded. So that'll really help for just all that coordination. But right now, initially, it's crazy busy trying to get all these people interviewed and onboarded and everything, right? That's a lot of people on top of our very full schedules. So, but it will pay off, right? It's going to help us scale to the next level by having all this whole new flood of administrative people, and then, new programmers and all of that, so that we can start breaking off into QA and other roles. We've had a couple people who said, well, I don't really want to do full-blown programming, but I love doing QA type stuff. We're like, great, we need more like that too. So we'll be bit by bit filling in all those other spots. What else? I just did a pretty hefty update of our schedule page. So if you go to rpgresearch.com/schedule, I'm still tweaking it. There's still a few more corrections, but it's almost fully up to date. And you'll see a lot of stuff on hold because of staff, warehouse, what have you, mostly staff. And but it just kind of shows you over the years the kinds of programs, the variety and the number of programs we've been running. And my hope is we can get a lot of these back up and running. Once we get a warehouse, which is one of our number one goals for this year, between administrative staff and warehouse, get the money, then most of those programs should be able to come back online over time once we've got the warehouse and we're moved in. So just kind of show you, those of you who may or may not have been aware of the whole variety of programs that we offer. They're all role-playing game related in one way or another, or accessibility related to gaming, or they have the cooperative music aspect, because we use that as an icebreaker. But some of you may or may not have been aware of how the variety that we have there. And what else? So I heard that you guys basically said that you all were unanimously decided on a Minecraft clone, sounds like?
Yes, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't able to. I was going to look into hosting a server, but you have to go into your router settings, and we're changing our whole network
For
this
port
week.
forwarding?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
because if you don't, if you don't have a DMZ or public IP, then you got to do port forwarding. That's not a big deal. That's normal. That whenever you host a server, that's a normal thing.
It did look like when I was following the rest of the instructions, though, it's working pretty well.
Good. Good.
I just haven't been able to do port forwarding stuff.
So summarize. I mean, I saw the message shortly after you guys finished, but it's kind of fallen out of my head as far as the details. I guess we'll start with Valerie. If you want to, call the meeting in order, or have you already done the roll call and all that?
We haven't. We
Okay.
kind of.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So let's go through it. Luke,
Here.
Dario,
Here.
Zach,
Oh, here.
Doug,
Here.
Trevor. Trevor, you're muted. Okay. I'm gonna assume he stepped out for a sec. So essentially what we had discussed in terms of the Minecraft clone was we played through both Mindtest and Terrasology. The issue with Terrasology is that it overloads the computer if you're running both Terrasology and Jitsi.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was running both on the RPG laptop that you guys sent over, and if I was on Terrasology, it would run fine, but I couldn't hear anyone on Jitsi, and if I moved over to Jitsi being the primary screen, Terrasology would buffer like crazy.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't think we decided that Mindtest was the better option because it's more ideal for older software.
Good.
I think
Old hardware.
Mindtest uses 256 megabytes, whereas you need 4 gigs recommended for Terrasology.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's wild.
That's
Yeah.
a huge footprint difference. Huh. Okay,
And,
what else?
Isn't Terrasology also only Windows 10? There's no older Windows support. I thought that was one of the things. Whereas Mindtest, people have gotten it to run on Windows XP if they've tried hard enough.
Okay. All right. Other comments and thoughts from everybody? Because since it was unanimous, I'm curious to hear everybody's different perspectives about what helped swing you over to the Mindtest side.
In my personal opinion, because I do play regular Minecraft at my school, it's a pretty close clone in terms of both graphics and just mechanics. Some animations are a little weird, but really I could believe this was just a texture pack for Minecraft. It could have fooled me.
Okay. All right. Who else? Somebody hasn't spoken yet about this?
I mean, this is Doug. I haven't, but I agree. I mean, the difference in the requirements is staggering. And I think, in terms of what you had described looking for, it just seems like Terrasology is pretty heavy. You're going to have to do a decent amount of support. It might be a more fun, involving game for the long haul, but I think Mindtest seemed to fit the requirements better.
Okay. So everybody feels really good about it. There's no misgivings anybody has. We're all solidly on board.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys. That's great to get that nailed down. Now, the next phase is going to be setting up our dedicated server and getting familiar with its own quirks between the server side and the client side. And then my ultimate goal, of course, the reason why I even consider it is using it. I've used in the past with a few clients who they didn't really want to do Neverwinter Nights. They liked Minecraft, and this was under Minecraft with a custom server, but we tried to use it as a role-playing game tool. And basically, I set up, an environment with the whole dungeon crawl and all of that they went through as a group in Minecraft, but in a role-playing game style. So it was kind of like a Neverwinter Nights experience, but, and I had to do a lot of customizations on the server and the world and all of that. But they basically had to go through an adventure and overcome the creatures along the way and get the supplies they wanted and, loot up and all that good stuff and keep themselves fed, et cetera, et cetera. So, but the next thank you very much. I'll turn the camera off in a minute here. I've been working nonstop here, so So that's ultimately, obviously, is we want to always tie this back into role-playing games rather than, if we start going off into every direction with games, we'll just be completely overwhelmed. It always needs to come back to role-playing games, accessibility, things like that. And so there's more I need to learn about that was back when Minecraft was still pretty new and limited in features. So I have not played Minecraft in years. When my kids were here, they played it a lot. I hosted servers for them. I had one of our Tolkien Society people asked me to host one for them for a while and did that. And it had a lot of custom mods, and it was a weird setup. But that was still a few years ago. And so I want to see the, again, usefulness of Minecraft, in this case Mindtest, for a role-playing game experience, that cooperative problem-solving experience, using that mind test thing, because that gives that, then we come back to those added benefits, right? Minecraft has a lot of wonderful things about creativity and such, but people can quickly get into griefer battles and all that, right? And we want to
line up each other's bases.
Exactly. We want
and all that fun
to
stuff.
try to encourage the cooperative aspect. We work with like Montessori schools, and they're really against combat. Like when we did a program with them, the only game they would let us run was No Thank You Evil for tabletop, because it was so relatively non-combat. They wouldn't let us run any other game system with their kids because they had combat. And then when we did a LARP with them, they were only allowed to use their imagination and fight imaginary creatures individually. They were not allowed to have combat with each other with the Boffer LARPs. They were really strict about that at Montessori school. So that's something I always, keep in mind. I try to always look for, like, okay, can this tool be used in a way that is lower combat so that it's of interest to a wider range of facilities and such. So, and yes, it is. It is possible. I just need to bring myself up to speed. So if you guys looked at that calendar page, you'll see I set up, for now, some of the schedule's tentative, but you'll see in there a regular Minecraft RPG kind of training session, if you will. It looks like on Monday. So basically we will open it up, and right now it's on hold, but we'll open it up to both community and training. So sometimes it'll be community programs, sometimes it'll be training, and will be anybody who wants to participate in that, feel free. You guys are not required to. I just want to let you know that this wasn't just a one-off. This does tie in with our bevy of different programs, again, trying to find ways to do this kind of cooperative play and integrate role-playing game benefits for a wide range of populations. Before we move on from the mind test thing, any last thoughts, words, comments, etc.? Val, you want to go through the list?
Luke?
Let me think. I am glad that we found mind test, because I was a little worried, like everyone was saying, that terasology was just going to like destroy people's system requirements, especially in the community programs and stuff. But I am happy with our decision overall, I feel.
Dario?
No, I'm good. I think we covered all the bases.
Okay. Zach?
No, I'm good. Yeah, same thing as Dario, pretty much.
Okay. Doug?
I'm good too.
Trevor?
I'm happy with the final decision.
Okay.
And Valerie, your final thoughts about the whole thing?
Yeah, I think this is probably the only valid decision that we can come to for what we're looking for. So, yeah, it's good that we revisited mind test, I think.
I'm really glad that it was that Discord channel who suggested it, right? I'm really glad we took another stab at it, because we were going to just lock down and go, okay, it's between these two and that's it. And I'm really glad that got added to it, because it's a much, seems, and the crafting, right? It's got crafting. Mm-hmm. That's a big one. So I'm really glad we didn't give up, that we kept at it, right? That's why I like this process where we go, well, let's keep trying until we really feel good about it. And that way we're less likely to really miss a good solution. So So well done, everybody. I really appreciate your time and effort on that. There's a big fur ball in the way.
Yeah,
All I
I
see
know.
is fur.
It's a cat. I don't think a dog would be quite as comfortable just standing on my keyboard.
Our puppy would. We just got a puppy last week, and he would be perfectly content as long as he's getting loves. He's little now, but he's going to be big very soon. He was born late November. Yeah. It's a standard poodle, so he'll be up around 50, 60 pounds when he's full grown. But right now he's just a little, he's just a little black fur ball.
Does everyone have a pet? I feel like at one point everyone's just gonna have a pet during work. At this point, it all started with Dario's dog.
I have a cat out of my house.
Well, there's research. I studied this a long time ago, and so that's why it was so important for me to get pets for all my kids. I forget the exact number now because it's been a while, but I think it was somewhere around 80% of those in prison. Now, keep in mind, there's a difference between jail and prison. A lot more people end up in jail than in prison, right? It depends on the state and the region and such, but generally difference between jail and prison, for those of you who don't know. Jail typically is less than a year. You're going to be a few days, weeks, or months, up to a year. Some do longer. There's usually fewer resources. Jail is generally meant to be shorter term. And like in small towns and such, jail is just for the weekend or something, right? They're really limited resources. Prison's meant to be longer term, a year plus. And again, there's variability in this. This is a generalization. And a lot more people end up in jail than end up in prison. There's a whole process to, right? Jail, you get arrested, you get booked, you get you get stripped, sprayed down, deloused, all of this. And then you may be, in there overnight or for the weekend, and then you get arraigned. And then an arraignment is usually where they'll say, whether you make bail or if they'll let you out on own reconnaissance or something like that, and you're set free. And then you'll come back and have your normal hearing process. You'll plea bargain or fight or whatever. And then you'll get your sentence if there's a conviction. Usually they want to do probation or rehab or something like that. But if it's a serious enough or a repeat offender, then they'll go, okay, you're going to do X amount of time. If it's a few months, they might remand you to the city or county jail. If it's a longer period of time, or they need more resources, or you're a dangerous criminal and they need more security, then they're more likely to remand you to a prison setting. So keep that in mind, that these studies were focused on prisons, not jails. And that's an important variable to know. Of the prisons, they found that about 80+% of prisoners had not had pets of their own growing up, and scored very low on empathy scores. And research shows if you grew up with a pet of your own, and you have pets, etc., you tend to have higher empathy scores. You're responsible for something else. There's consequences to your actions when you don't feed them, take care of them, etc. There's a feedback system there that lets you know when you're doing harm, etc. Now for sociopaths and psychopaths, that doesn't matter too much, but for everybody else, it really helps. And it can avert the development of sociopathy and such, depending upon the living circumstances of the individual and such. So pet ownership's a really big deal, especially the kind that are cuddly and require a little more responsibility. Having a fish,
like a dog or a cat.
Cats and dogs and
like
horses
that.
And, furry little animals that love to cuddle, hamsters, what have you. Those kind of cuddly ones that give back something. I've got some leftover pets from when my kids moved out. I've got a bearded dragon who's now 15 years old. And of the lizards, they're the most cuddly of the reptile branch. But that's not saying a lot. And they have almost no limbic system at all. So there isn't, it isn't the same. They pretty much feed them and take care of them, and they'll leave you be. But if you were the size of a cricket, they would not hesitate to eat you. they would have no qualms about it. So, it depends on the pet. This is mostly cats and dogs types studies. But anyway, it's just something to be aware of. And I have not had a cat or dog of my own since I moved out of my parents in the late 80s, out of my mom's house. when I was 18. Wasn't in a circumstance where I could bring my pet with me. I had a basset hound at the time and couldn't bring her with me. So we're really tickled. And my wife had a geriatric black lab who eventually, got too old and moved on. So it's been a few years since she had her. So we're really excited. And his name is, and this guy can bring you back into gaming a little bit. His name is Mort. The diminutive is Morty. Mort is in the Discworld Terry Pratchett series. You guys familiar with those books at all? Or movies? Okay, they're very funny. If you ever go check them out, there's like 35, 40 books in the Discworld series. There is a GURPS role-playing game that's quite good. There's several movies.
35 books?
What's that?
35.
30 or 40 books, yeah.
It's going to be great while I'm doing the Grubhub. I'll listen to them on Audible.
There you go. They're great. Terry Pratchett, he passed away from Alzheimer's just a few years ago, but his books he's very entertaining. They're very humorous. And the first one, I think, was The Color of Magic in the series. Basically, the books make fun of all the fantasy tropes and sci-fi tropes and other fiction tropes. So you have, for example, Cohen the Barbarian. Not Conan, Cohen, who, okay, if you're the ultimate barbarian who never gets defeated, that means old age is going to creep up on you. So now he and the barbarian horde are a bunch of 90-year-old plus barbarians, right? And it just, they have no teeth. They can only eat soup, or as he says, shoop. And their backs go out really easily, and just all these things. They're very funny, and it makes fun of Fafford and Grey Mouser, all of the other literary fantasy greats. He in a nice, loving, fun way makes fun of them, and they're very entertaining. And the more knowledge you have of the fantasy sci-fi fiction world, the more of his little jokes and comments and puns and such you'll get. So they're a lot of fun. My wife introduced me to them years ago, and they're a really fun read. So anyway, Mort in one of these books. So in the books, there's personifications of immortal entities. So there's the personification of death. There's the personification of these things, kind of like Piers Anthony with the Incarnations Immortality series. And death is, as you would expect, a Grim Reaper type skeleton. And again, you can watch a few of these movies too. There's a few movies that they've made over the years. And there's a brand new, I think either Prime or Netflix or I don't know, somewhere. There's a brand new series that they've just come out with just this month, I think. And death likes kittens. And he rides on a pale horse named Binky. My wife's car has a license plate frame because she couldn't get Binky because for whatever reason Washington State has outlawed Binky as a custom plate for some reason. Every variation of Binky is not allowed in Washington State for custom plates. We don't know why. There must be some bad connotation of Binky in pop culture that we don't know, but it's on the forbidden curse words whatever list for some reason.
It's hilarious.
Yeah,
Like Colorado is very you can put whatever on the license plate basically, as long as it's not a
Washington State is such an authoritarian state. It's really frustrating. It's really bad. Anyway, so she got a license plate. So she went with a spelling of Discworld as her license plate. And then we put a frame on there, Death's Pale Horse, Binky, and because she has a white SUV, and she's named it Binky. So there we go. So now we have a new puppy, and we were trying different ideas, and nothing was quite clicking. And finally went, hey, let's try Discworld stuff. And there's a whole long list of names. And this standard poodle is black, just pitch black. And so finally we settled on Mort. Well, Mort was a farm boy whose father was frustrated because Mort was such a deep thinker, but he never really did anything. He'd think, but never really did anything. And so he needed him to get a job. So he took him to the local village's town fair that was happening once a year where wizards and others will come down and hire new apprentices. And he needed to get his son to be hired and go get a job and, whatever. And nobody would hire him because he's a deep thinker and they all wanted, muscle and hard workers, etc. And then just as they were giving up and leaving, Death arrives and decides to apprentice Mort. And so Mort is Death's apprentice. Now, Mort is also based on, the French Mort, like Mort d'Arthur, the death of, King Arthur and such. And apparently it means the bringer of death. So it's a dark humor thing. We have named our dog the bringer of death. Our little adorable puppy is the bringer of death. And standard
Give him,
poodles.
6 years to grow up, he will be.
No, but even when they get big, standard poodles, like their bark's intimidating, they are not an intimidating looking dog. I've had 2 before. They are
No.
not intimidating.
Same thing with I have a bunch of pit bulls, and
Those.
they sound scary, but they're the greatest dogs.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, but people have an intimidation association with them. Standard poodle, not so much. And the only problem is they are really bright dogs, and so they get bored really easily. You have to constantly keep them interested, or they'll get into everything. My second one, he was an escape artist. He could open anything. The garage door, sliding glass door with a little lock pin at the bottom, sliding glass door with a lock up on the handle, round doorknobs. He put his mouth around it, and there was the kennel. He got up on the doghouse and used his head to slide the kennel roof out and jumped out. They're brilliant, so you really have to keep them entertained. Anyway, total tangent, but there is the gaming part with Discworld. If you're not familiar with Discworld, check it out. A lot of fun, a great gaming setting, and a fun environment. All right. We're just very happy to have the puppy. We've had a lot of sleepless nights as he's getting used to being here, but that's part of why I'm being a little extra dingy here. So, after that total tangent, let's see. Where are we at on everything here, Valerie?
Well, next on the agenda, we were going to continue wireframing the objections with Warlock of Firetop Mountain. We had just gotten to the point where we were choosing between the 2 levers and were objecting to the one that had been chosen. So we need to figure out how to run the objections and all of that.
Good. Okay, so who did that wireframe we were working on last week get synced up to GitHub and everybody grabbed the latest version?
Yes, I did upload it to GitHub, so I uploaded it on that day, so it should be the latest version up on there.
Okay, did everybody
forgot
go
to
grab that
follow,
latest
but I
version? Because it
figured it
had
out.
quite a few additions. If you haven't, go ahead and grab it now. And then do we need to roll, or do we know who is?
We need to roll. We had started over. Right now, Trevor's the only one excluded from wireframing.
Okay. All right, so. Let me fill my array here manually. And for those of you who are following, I'm still waiting to hear back on the Jitsi programming gig. So I would be, it's a paid gig leading a team of developers out of India to take Jitsi and try to make it have all the same features as Zoom and or exceed Zoom to use in a classroom online education setting for a large public school district on the East Coast.
That sounds cool.
And yeah, and it'll come back and benefit us because I will end up being the master of Jitsi. Apparently all their other candidates, everybody dabbled with Jitsi, but nobody had come close to what we've done, with TFN and everything. And yet there's so much I don't know about it. It does require me getting deeply back into both Java and JavaScript and such, as well as other pieces, and Oracle 12, I think. So, which, it is going to add more to my plate, but it pays very well if they do select me. But it'll end up benefiting us because we will end up having all kinds of great features because I'll be using this as a test bed, right? I'll have my initial dev environment, and then we'll be able to test out a lot of new layout features and customizations. and I want to extend Jitsi to be able to do all the gaming stuff, right? I want to be able to add dice rolling and all of that. So
Like a roll D20 kind of thing.
right, but open source and free
Yeah.
and not as bloated, and trying to apply all of our research principles to try to make the
That would
experience
be
better.
really cool.
Yeah, so we'll see. My fingers are crossed. They had an unexpected additional interview because they were trying to talk the client into paying extra for me for whatever reason. I was perfectly fine with what I was asking for, but they were actually trying to get a higher number. So the client then said, "We want to interview him directly." Then, so it was like a fourth interview with like 4 more people, and I don't know how it went. I don't know yet. I'll probably know by Tuesday, and if I get that, my schedule is going to be even more insane, but it will come back to benefit us because I'll be bringing myself back up to speed on all my coding stuff. And the good thing is they use already design patterns and unit testing, all the stuff that I always push for, and a lot of companies don't use properly. So that'll be good to get refreshed on it. And so anyway, I'll keep you guys posted. And there was somebody we were talking to in Odoo, one of you, we were talking about React or something. I can't remember what one of you mentioned. Is there anybody here?
I think that sounds like something Tim would talk about.
Yeah, it might have been. Well, it was somebody saying that they were working on learning something, and they're interested in working, learning together and refreshing and all that. I'm like, great, yeah, I'm happy to. You might be right. Okay, so just a heads up about that. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are in the queue today, with Trevor excluded as number 6. So I'll do a D10 and split it. What?
Cut a side off of a D6.
What's that?
I said just cut a side off a D6.
Well, remember I have those I do have a 5-sided die on that, in that funky box. But I'll just go with the D10 and okay. So it is Dario's turn. So you'll be sharing your diagram today, Dario. So go make sure you've got the latest version from last week and pull that up and screen share it.
If you pull the origin, does it do the draw.io files, guys?
Anybody have an answer to that? I don't have an answer for that.
I know it's like code and stuff does it. I just didn't know it's like how those files are.
Yeah, I haven't really looked how they've been organized. Valerie, anybody?
I can open it and see if it matches what he's got.
Yeah, see if it's synced up, if it's part of that or not.
Well, the name of the most recent one is flowchart turn selection non-combat 2021-01-09.
Right, but he's asking if you do a pull from the whole repo, will it be part of it, or you have to download it separately?
Yeah, if you just like clone the whole thing, like if you just download the whole thing in like a zip file, you'll get everything.
Okay, so if I pull it, it should probably work then.
Yeah.
Yes, at least in theory.
Yeah, GitHub has a lot of in theory.
Well, there's a lot of exclusion rules you can set up and everything, exclusion rules. So I mean that's totally appropriate.
Like your what's that? Your ignore file.
Yeah, exactly.
That can be a pain. I've noticed. Like, in the project that works on outside of here, we have an ignore file that like it doesn't actually ignore a lot of the things you tell it to.
Oh wait, I don't think I have permissions to get pulls and stuff from our GitHub.
You might have to pass your login parameters. You may not be able to do a public anonymous pull. You might have to do pass your login parameters.
Oh. All right, well, let me try.
Right? I haven't looked at the configuration. Nicholas set it up on. You guys remember we're using the business one, right? And Nicholas set up the business account, so I don't really know how it's configured. I haven't had a chance to look at it. So have you guys been able to pull okay?
It works just now.
Okay. Was that with passing your user parameters, or was that anonymous?
No, I was already logged in.
Okay.
Wasn't there an access issue though, like a week or
I'm
two
logged
back?
in right now, and I still can't see anything.
Yeah, Zach, I think you were in that meeting. Didn't we have to get privileges set up in one of the meetings for the business one?
Oh, so yeah, if you missed the meeting after we moved, are you aware we moved the latest repo where it's now at the business repo rather than the quote-unquote personal repo? Did you know that?
No, I don't think so. I've always used RPG research on GitHub to.
Yeah, we're now at RPG-research for the company.
Okay.
So you would not have gotten an update for quite a while now. Here, I'll put the link in here. That is the new. We still have the old one there, but it's the individual user account for RPG research. This is the
Okay.
company one. This allowed. I think this gave us like teams and other stuff that a little bit better features or something. I forget the reason, but when Nicholas talked about it, like, yeah, we should go with that. And why is there? I see in our repo we've got ERPG, and then we've got account management module for Puppet Bolt and managing users on Linux. Where the heck did that come from?
Is that on your end?
Oh, that's Nicholas. Nicholas is doing that. Okay, so that's Nicholas doing that. So you don't want to pull the full repo. You want to pull the ERPG sub repo.
Okay. Yeah, I see it.
So that would be this.
And this is the non-combat.
Yeah, this is going to be under non-combat at this stage that we're working on. Yeah, that looks like the... yeah, that's it. That's the quadrant we were working in, trying to figure out this objection option, trying to minimize the hassle of having to say no all the time so that we could set a threshold of when you're flagged or not. Because I want it to be the opposite of voting, where voting is the tyranny of the majority, right? But I want people to be able to object if there's something that they don't necessarily have to persuade everybody else, but they don't want to participate in that decision in one way or the other. And they don't want, it's different than opting out and just saying, whatever, I'll go with the group. It's, I don't want to do that. So we ran into a situation where there was a guy hanging on meat hooks, basically being tortured by goblins. And the question was, do you run away? Do you charge and fight the goblins and try to save him? Or do you run up and stab the guy hanging on the meat hooks and go, and act like one of the goblins? And you could see that being an ethical issue for some players. And they're like, okay, how do we figure out somebody who does not want to run up and stab the guy, right? Doesn't want to do what on the surface might seem to be evil. Now, it's revealed in the book after you make the choice that you suspected he was already dead. And so stabbing an already dead guy, might be questionable as far as defiling a corpse, but, at least you're not killing somebody. So, it was a borderline ethic rather than outright evil. It was a good way
Or putting him out of his misery.
Yeah, well, that really gets into a complicated ethics discussion that we don't have time for.
Of course.
That's
We-
our block to this meeting.
one of our staff members on our research team and our performer team, he is an ethics professor at Eastern Washington University, and he uses in the summer, he runs a D&D, he runs an ethics summer course using D&D to help teach ethics here at Eastern Washington University, and he's one of our staff members as well. He's now an assistant dean. They just promoted him, so he's been way too busy to be active with us. But yes, I miss having him around for those wonderful ethical discussions. Hopefully he'll be back again in the future. So this is trying to address that like, no, I am not okay with this. I do not want my PC doing this. And as we talked about, in the system, eventually we'll have a point system that says, if you do something against the alignment or whatever the code is, you're going to rack up, negative points versus doing good things and getting positive points. And then also, NPC reactions, right? We did all that in Neverwinter Nights, or at least talked about during Neverwinter Nights. And we want to be able to address that so that we've got, like Tor has, shadow and hope points, right? And we wanted some method of doing that. Well, sometimes you're not going to agree with the group, and it's kind of might be unfair if you're like, you know what, you guys are going to do what you're going to do, but I am not going to run up and stab that guy. And at that point in the system, let's say he was alive and you ran up and stabbed him because you were worried about fighting the goblins, the people who stabbed him would gain a shadow point, in quotes. We haven't locked any of those mechanics down. It's just a concept right now. And the person who stayed back would not gain that shadow point, right? And then I heard you guys talking about the reverse of, let's say you want to run up and save the guy, so you fight the goblins and set them free, versus somebody says, I'm not getting involved, I'm not going to go in, or I'm going to wait outside. And the people who go and set them free gain a hero or hope point or whatever, and the person who waited at the door and didn't get involved does not. They don't get a shadow point, but they didn't get the bonus, right? So we need to, down the road, allow for that mechanic of rewarding the good, in quotes, behavior, accumulating whatever consequences for quote unquote bad behavior, and missing out if you opt out all the time, and not take chances, etc. So, but the problem with the voting system that you see in some games is it's a tyranny of the majority. You get a majority, whatever the threshold you set as a majority, whether it's 51% or 2/3 or 3/4. You end up with people who did not want to do it and are dragged kicking and screaming into something they don't want to do, and that can cause resentment and upset. Most of the time, we think people are going to just go along and be just fine, but when something like that comes up, that's where this mechanic is so important, is you have an opt-out of doing the action. This obviously, as you can see, has added some complexity, and that's why it's a good thing, as we talked about last week, that we are play testing this in this physical realm. Because think about if you'd written code, we did the simple version first, now you've got to extend all of that code with all of this new flow. That's a pain in the rear, and that's how you end up with a lot of spaghetti code, right? Whereas here, we're able to work out all these use cases in advance, and it's going to make it a lot easier to allocate who's working on what pieces of code and make them integrate more cleanly. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. And I've been babbling so much, I'm running out of time because I've got the next meeting. What is going to happen is I've got an 11 o'clock meeting with the new volunteer coordinator team, but I'm going to try to pop back here. Once that meeting started, I want them to kind of do their thing, and I'm going to come back here from that meeting so that we can keep continuing on. So I won't be gone the whole second hour as I was last time. Is there anything we wanted to cover before I start reading from the book again? And Valerie, what number had we stopped at? Was it?
We were at 303.
Because
we had advanced beyond that goblin.
Yeah. I thought we went beyond 303. I think we're at 243. I think we went to 303, arrive at the end of the passage where it meets another going east-west, but an iron portcullis blocks your way. No amount of charging is going to budge it. On the wall to your right are two levers, and it seems likely that these levers have something to do with raising the portcullis. Do you wish to pull the right lever, the left lever? Who was it last week who made a choice? Somebody chose, it looks like...
Trevor chose left, and then we were setting up the objections.
Okay, so that was... Okay, so that's where we're at. So Trevor chose left, and then we had people going, whoa, wait a minute, because Trevor wasn't in the session where he got a little bit of a clue that everybody else got. So that's what triggered this objection thing, right? Because everybody had a piece of information. Right. Because otherwise we would have gone to number 243 if we go with Trevor's choice. And so that's why we were there. Okay, that makes sense now. So, all right. Did we have any more of this logic we needed to fix, or are we ready to try to play through and see and test it out again? Was there anything else we needed to add to it? Do you recall? Trevor, you were handling this flow last week, right?
Yes, this is correct. I do not remember anything else.
Then let's try it. So let's zoom out a little bit. Was it Doug or Dario? Who was it? Dario. Go ahead and... We still want the diagram. We just want it zoomed out a little bit. A little more full screen or something.
I wish you could remove the shapes on the side when you're trying to use this.
You should be able to. You should be able to go to...
Oh, yeah, there we go.
There you go. Yeah. All right. So go ahead and let's start at the top. And we're gonna go through again the choice we started last week. So we started... Everybody joined the game. We got a user count, whatever it was. Now we've got a new user count. We ended up storing that user count. Then we went to user opt-out process. I don't remember who opted out. It doesn't matter right now. Then, okay, we've got a line crossing. Whenever there's lines crossing, I try to get away from that whenever possible. That line on user opt-out process, yeah, we need to kind of move things. Yeah, bring that other user count opt-out down a little. Let's try to clean that up a little bit. It's okay if it goes up and around as long as we're not crossing lines, but get a little bit more space between 5 and 6 there. That's better. And then you can bring 5 down, kind of mid-distance. Good. Yeah, that's better. Whenever you see lines crossing on a flow, if there's any way, even if it means going wildly around, that is always better. It's much easier to read. And yeah, you could put that coming out of the top of that user opt-out process. You may have to redo the arrow to do it, but and it says example equals U4. That's probably why the arrow's having trouble. Anyway, I'll let you clean that up. You've got the idea. Okay, so we went there, user opt-out process. All users opt out. Oh, so we added also, if all users opt out, add a rest period. So where all the characters stop and rest because they can't decide. Like nobody's making a decision, so they're standing there resting, right? That was what we threw in. We didn't work out all the details of that. That's why it's a larger box, but it was a nice concept. However, I don't see an arrow coming out of that rest period to resume. So I guess, does that go back to start? Or actually, I guess it would go back to I guess it would come back to 5, wouldn't it? Or, I mean, I guess for now we can just have that circle back to start. That's probably
that makes a lot more sense
that's
to me. At the
probably the
start.
cleanest. Because who knows, rest period might be a time some people leave the game.
Like it might be an actual rest period.
Yeah. Like, it's a good time for a break, everybody. We'll have to figure that out as we get into the logic deeper. So yeah, so out of the bottom of that, maybe circle that back around to the start circle, and we can always change that for the better if we think of something better later. All right. Okay, but that should come out of the bottom of that rest box so that the number 5 can come into the side of that rest box. All right. So then we did the random selection, and the person who's not opted out got to choose. It was Trevor who ended up being selected. Can't read number 8. What does that say? What does the parallelogram text say for number 8?
Selected user.
Okay, selected user. Okay, user opt-out process 2. So it may be they didn't opt out initially, but now they're put on the spot to make a decision, and they decide at the last minute, like, I'm really not comfortable making this decision after all. And they opt out, and we circle back to the next person who's not opted out. All right, so that's that loop. And then again, it has a thing like, well, if everybody opts out at the second stage, we go take a rest period as well. So that's good. I like that flow. That I think covers our use cases. So they don't opt out, and we go into temporary. So everybody who did opt out goes into, okay, that part doesn't quite, the temporary exclusion sub-process. Okay, we've got a little bit. Okay, opt out, yes. Opt out, no. Okay, so actually that's a little broken right there, isn't it? Number 9B. 9A should be 9A going into temporary exclusion sub-process. And 9B should go down to 12. User makes game decision. Right? Let me think about that for a second. I'm running on very little sleep today, so please call me on my BS if I'm off in La La Land. Let's see. So that would go straight down, but if they don't opt out, then that makes sense, right? It goes from there down to number 12, and user makes game decision. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Well, what's the only kind of data that goes into the temporary exclusion process? It's just the number of people that opt out, right?
The ID of the people who opted out, not the number of people, the IDs of the people specific, the array of who opted out.
That's what I was trying to figure out, like what actually is supposed to go in.
Yeah, it's just an array of opt-outs so that when we match against the people who are there, it basically it masks them out of the decision-making process. Does that make sense to everybody? So 9B, opt-out equals no, needs to actually go straight down to 12, user makes game decision. Although our numbers might be off, and I'm not going to worry about that right now. Does that make more sense to everybody? It makes more sense to me.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I'd get rid of that number 11 line. We can always clean up the numbers later as long as we don't have duplicates, that they're just identifiers for now. Okay, so now user makes game decision. Parameter check. Check user preferences for objections regarding flagging. So we talked about, for those who weren't here, that you have a threshold of if it's a low risk. So we're going to decide as a DM or module designer that this is a higher risk decision or a lower risk decision on a scale of 1 to 10 or whatever point. We haven't worked that out, but basically some decisions are left or right, no big deal. Low risk. Just go with the flow. I don't want an objection button. If it's a low risk decision, don't even ask me if I object. I don't want to have to click that every single time. But if it's a higher risk decision, an ethical issue, we know that there's some extra danger, what have you, then they will get presented, depending upon their settings preference, with a button that says, hey, do you object to this decision? That was what we'd worked out for that piece. Somebody want to continue explaining? I got to go check in with we should take a break. We should take our 5-minute, 10-minute break. Now I got to go talk to the volunteer coordinator meeting now. If you guys can pick up, bringing everybody up to speed on the logic flow there and fixing it, and I'll be back as soon as I can, probably about 15, 20 minutes. And then we'll continue the story. But if you guys get that all cleaned up and discuss with each other and fix any of the logic flow and clean up there, is that good for everybody?
Sounds good.
All right, great. See you in a little bit.
Hawk, real quick,
Yes.
where's the volunteer training meeting happening?
It's going to be /admin.
Copy that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm heading there right now. I'm running a couple minutes late.
Got it. No
See you
problem.
there. Thanks, JD. All right, I'm going to leave you guys on the air for you guys so that it just stays on there. Just realize you're on the air. But go ahead and go and do your 5-minute break, and then I'll be back as soon as I can.
Okay.
How am I going to do that? So you can mute.
Is everybody back?
I'm back and hanging around, but I think it's only been a couple minutes.
Okay. I found my doggo. You want to see?
Yes.
This is Izzy. Oh, sorry, my webcam's all shaky. Yeah, this is Izzy. She's a Chihuahua Chorky. She's like 15. She's old boy.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. We used to have little dogs all the time. The last little dog we had with her was like 20 before he went away. Hey, Izzy. She's the loud one. She scares the mailman. Like literally, we got a letter one day. Like, your dogs are frightening. I'm like, what?
Sorry.
I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, I thought I wouldn't have to worry about volume when I got a cat, but I was wrong.
Yeah, I have a cat at my girlfriend's house. We got a cat together. I just can't have it in my house because my mom's allergic. And yeah, my cat's loud too. Are you back, Dario?
Yes, I'm back.
Did you see the dog?
I did. You said people were frightened of it?
Yeah, well, she's just all loud and proud. So like
Gotcha.
she barks at like through the window at like the male person, and my other two big pit bulls will bark. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Oh,
just like it's one of those situations where it's like she's like the pack leader, I guess.
right.
And she's licking me aggressively. Do you need some like salt in your diet, dog? What's the arrow on number 5 going up? Is that just showing the user count after?
I think this one went to this box right here. If all
Okay,
users
that confused me for a sec, but yeah.
Okay, so we should all be officially back at this point.
Yup.
Yup. Okay.
Yup.
Yup. So let's go ahead and clean it up, I guess. Would you adjust the spelling of exceeds in the diamond underneath 11? Yeah.
Is there no autocorrect on?
I
the-
think it just regards everything as an object and doesn't.
Oh,
I don't
makes
know.
sense.
I don't know if we're going in order, but there's continue with choices yes both ways.
I'm just running through the process so far on my own end. I'm at 8 so far, just double checking it.
You see what I mean, though. From
Yeah,
go.
I do.
Okay. Yeah, that makes. So I'm looking at it. So if the selected user opts out of the user opt-out process, then he's subtracted from the opt-out for the random count for the next time they call it. He's added to the buffer. That makes sense. Oof. Good luck with that one.
When they break out to group discussion or chat, should that also be like just a rest period? Or do we not want to do that? Well, I guess it depends on the choice.
Yeah, I don't know if we settled that because I know we had said we don't want to get into like making a chat at this
Yeah.
time and stuff.
Yeah.
But the only thing I'm confusing, where are we gonna store the risk threshold? That's something I'm noticing with this. Like we have to, cause I know we have like user count is defined and stored here.
Well, they have check user preferences.
Okay, so it'd be in that user preferences or GM preferences, something like that. That's where that object would be.
I think so.
Okay. That was like the biggest thing. I'm like, how is it gonna reference that? I'm confused. The dog wants to get off my lap or stay on. I'm not sure.
The dog is probably confused too. Hey, could somebody remind me again, like number 10, the temporary exclusion subprocess? What does that do?
That's it's basically the queue for who's already opted out for this decision. So remember how if you opt out, like you're just gonna like we keep a list of people who opt out, so that if everyone opts out, we don't just ask everyone else the same people again.
Like with
Okay.
that meat hook example, it kind of helps to like exclude the people that do not want to do the bad things. or the
I'm
good
not-
things.
I'm not sure it's in the right place now. Then is it? If that's what it's doing.
Um,
Because you're getting it to it when a decision is completed.
well, I think it's in that place because we're giving the person who didn't opt out a chance to opt out later on, and so that's why it's there.
9B used to point to it, but then Hawk wanted 9B to point to user makes game decision.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's what's confusing me.
So it went from this diamond to 10 and then 11 to 12.
But how does it connect to there from like the user past user makes game decision? How does it connect there?
Well, at this point, I don't think they can opt out anymore, right? So they wouldn't have to go to the sub process at all.
Yeah, we had that before we did the whole objection
So
aspect of
is
it.
that even required?
Yeah, I feel like we've now detailed it, haven't we? Because it looks like
Yeah, we already have a temporary exclusion sub process.
it's to the left there, right? So we like store
Yeah.
the user count, opt out. It's
Yeah,
like
I guess it does kind of.
Unless we want to put all that in that box so we can separate it from the flow easier.
so I would think once you've exceeded risk threshold or continue with choice, you're eventually going to come back to start again, right?
No, maybe it does need to be there because this is like objection, because those are objections to actions versus these are exclusions to action, like post, like with the temporary exclusion sub process, like because this is already after you say you don't want to opt out in the second user opt out process.
Right, and then 12 they make their decision, so the decision is made, and
Like
then we
I want to
see,
do X.
and then like if you look like, you know, what is it, 14A? If you exceed risk threshold, no, that so then the choice is going ahead. So then the choice happens in the game, and then this process starts over, right?
Oh, okay, it goes back to the user. Okay.
Well, maybe it should still be there because the people who opted out, like we still need a place to store like who said no. So maybe that's
Like another
just a
array or
placeholder.
something.
Yeah, maybe that's just another placeholder for that.
Or does it stand for like removing the person who's just gone?
That might make more sense. Like it removes stuff instead of adding more data. We just remove it, and then it refreshes at the beginning of the next turn. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me.
Instead of having two arrays, we just have one and like just use a pushback or whatever to remove it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because we can always pop it, and it'll be gone.
Oh, hang on. I just petted you, dog. She had an accident. Hang on.
Oh,
She is like really old, so it's okay. I'm just a little annoyed.
ah,
I'll be back.
okay.
Okay, I think isn't 10 the process whereby the person who's just gone is taken out?
That's what it was when we first made it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be.
So that makes sense. So after a turn's done, you go back through it because if it's the end of the turn, everyone's added back. Otherwise, the person who just went is removed. And then that feeds the user count. So that makes sense.
So then when they break out to group discussion chat, do we want to just loop that back into continue a choice, or do we want to? Because after they get back out of the chat, they're either going to have to choose between continuing or start over again, or start from he's already made the decision, right? So
Well, I like what you said earlier, Zach, about that maybe going into another rest period, like going in, like if we're not going to build out a chat, right?
yeah,
Then it is similar to the rest period, isn't it? The turn basically gets restarted.
true.
I mean, I don't know that. I don't know if we decided that.
I'm thinking, well, the reason why I said that first is because I remember we said we didn't want to chat, but if they're going to discuss it, because like we assume they are with like Discord or something, something needs to happen. They can't just stare at a screen because, for immersion and stuff like that. So something needs to happen. But I just don't know like what that should be. Because if you think like an immersion, they're just stopping in a hallway, talking to each other. And
What did I miss?
We're talking about that break out into group discussion chat. Like, should that just be like a rest period? Because you failed. If we're not going to build a chat, right? So now, people have it's past the threshold. People have objected. The person who made the choice has said, "Okay, I won't continue with my choice." So basically, their choice is now vetoed. So then, what happens next?
well, that's why I decided. I was wondering, do we want it to loop back into continue a choice? Because they may not be vetoed at all, and they were just like, we're going to do this, and then they'll go back.
Well, I think they
Yeah,
have.
but if it loops back, then you could say, "Oh, I'm not going to continue with choice," and then it breaks out into another discussion.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
I mean, I think that again, the rest period thing makes a lot of sense to me, because now they've objected. The player has said, "Okay, fine, I heed your objection." So it's sort of like start the turn over, maybe, if we're not building a chat engine.
True. I mean, yeah, that could work.
We might be though, because we had said we didn't want to build in like an audio or video feature. I might just want to link in a third-party service, but like a text chat might still be a valid option that we were looking at.
I'm looking to see if there's plugins. I know like some of them are open source, like for the Godot engine. I'm seeing maybe there's a chat plugin that's compatible with our source agreement.
Yeah, but I remember us and Hawk talking about like we don't want to bog down at least this prototype with a chat right now.
But I'm saying like in the future, obviously.
True,
Like,
yeah.
like this is like post phase 2. This is like phase 3 or 4.
I think the chat's problematic too, because I think somebody had said early on, you probably want to have a chat open the whole time, because you're going to be chatting. I mean, if you're chatting at all, because
How would you use like text chat if you're using the brain interface?
if you have it,
True.
that's true too.
Because like it's like you're texting, for lack of a better term, like those old phones where you had to like enter each key like 3 times to get to the third letter.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have one of those and everyone else has like a keyboard, kind of, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, so maybe having chat's not a good idea.
10 key. Is that what they called it? 10 key? No, that's the numpad. What was that called?
Rotary
Rotary?
phone.
I thought rotary is the one you spun it around, like the
Yeah.
yeah, like
Mhm.
that. Anyway,
I vote rest period. There's one voice.
I mean, yeah, rest period seems like at least it seems like a good placeholder like solution for now. And if we really want to change it, we can do it later.
Because it's kind of like everybody opting out, right? Because the player who's
True.
made the choice is now opting out. They're saying, "Okay, I forget my choice."
I mean, if they're getting to this point, that means enough people objected to where like, all right, maybe I shouldn't do this.
maybe we shouldn't go to the meat hooks. Maybe we should make a specific like rest period or like group discussion process, and it would just link to that both times.
True.
That's what I would suggest doing. So like I don't know, like
Yeah,
basically,
I can see that because not every discussion is going to last long enough for a rest period, you
and
know?
like if you think about it, a lot of like RPGs is the theater of the mind kind of conversation stuff.
Yeah.
So like having a rest period might be a better way to have players do that naturally.
Mm-hmm.
I just think if you're playing this game, like if you're chatting, you're probably gonna be chatting the whole time, right? If you're
Like you'll
chatting, like
you'll have a
yeah,
Discord call or something open, most likely.
yeah, because if you just pop up the window, sometimes you're like, well, what if you want to chat and the window's not up? You know, what I mean, like,
Yeah, what if it bugs out? I mean, if we want to like start writing down things for next meeting, or if we want to start making a rest period process, we can do that.
Yeah.
Because like
Uh,
that
yeah.
sounds cool.
I mean, discussion would kind of be a rest period, so I can see us having to flesh
And
that out a little
it's
bit.
like rest period air quotes. Like I
Yeah.
would just see it as like any sort of like non-combat action where it's mainly focused on group discussion.
it could
Should
just,
I remove this?
No, I wouldn't remove it. I would. Um.
Yeah, I'll keep it for now.
I mean, a rest period could just be skip a turn, right?
Yeah.
Skip
I mean,
around.
it doesn't have to be, or start over. You know, start the decision making process over again. You know, it doesn't have to. The thing is, man, once we get past if we, oh no, that wouldn't work. So never mind.
We had talked to potentially about when you build the tool set, the possibility that the specific game writer could choose whether to have combat turn process or non-combat turn process, you know, at a given in certain situations potentially. So if they had
Oh,
like
okay.
like a tense, you know,
Like there's like a type of like kind of like Minecraft, you can maybe make it creative or survival. Like you have just like a switch you would flip.
Okay. That could be interesting.
like if you wanted to in your storyline ensure that every player had a choice, because you know in combat everybody gets their turn.
Mm-hmm.
Time slows down, you know.
Everyone's actions are in 6 seconds. Yep.
I just realized something. How is this? How are we gonna make it so you can plug in different game systems? I know there's a thing we eventually want to do, like with these kind of processes and stuff. Do you think they would just like basically each game system would have to have its own process, like to be turned on?
I don't know. I think that would depend on the API, right?
I
Like-
think Hawk was talking about if you make everything percentage based,
Yeah,
that can
Oh.
tie back into most game systems.
I'm just thinking like I was thinking like in my head. I was looking at this. I'm like it should work, but I can think of games like in combat specifically where like I don't know, like a lot of games that use distance a lot in combat, like Warhammer or Cyberpunk 2020, for all the calculations might have to have a different process than like the regular combat scenarios.
Yeah, I'm not sure because I'm not sure how it. If there
It
are
might
money
just be that, like,
differences.
they have to write their own, the GM,
Ooh, yeah, that could be a problem.
which isn't fun.
Yeah. I think that's something we should maybe write down as a potential problem that
Is
we
like
might have to
the
solve.
game system agnostic thing.
Yeah, but I don't think we can I don't think we should account for it in like these flowcharts now.
Yeah.
But
I
maybe.
mean, once we're working on the combat one again, obviously.
Sure.
But like because most game systems, I would argue that like outside of combat, the theater of the mind stuff is very similar.
Oh yeah, that I'm sure all that because it's going to be left up to people's imagination, and we don't have to do anything for.
Yeah, we
people
don't have to program people's brains.
Yeah, that,
Not yet, at least.
yeah, they're going to do it themselves. So, I'm just thinking of like how do we streamline this better?
What do you
Like-
think, Valerie?
Good question. I mean, part of the issue, I really think what we had been discussing, maybe last meeting or the meeting before, where you assign risk numbers to decisions, might be the best way to,
So,
I
like,
don't know.
as the GM, like, let's say you're like using the tool set, right? To make choices, every choice you would just input like an integer or whatever for how many. How much
Right, and it could be simple as like 1, 2, 3, like 1 being a
5 being
decision
really
of like
bad.
what direction are we walking, and like just so that we have some kind of reference for how consequential is this, and then when you go into the game you can set like we only want objections available on anything rated 3 or higher. And that would, I mean, that would cut back on the number of objections that you have to deal with, but it wouldn't simplify the objection process.
Like, do we really need objections for like simpler tasks? Like, do I buy a sweet roll or a non-sweet roll?
Yeah, it's like that's way too much. I mean, that's what Hawk was talking about with like voting becoming a bit of a dictatorship, because if you have to vote on every single thing, it's like what's even the point of making choices anymore?
Yeah.
Here's another question. Do we want the players risk like settings? Or would you rather should we prioritize their risk settings or the GMs for their module? Because
That's a good question.
Well, I think we were.
people are going to have different ones, and if they all get into the same module, like some of them are going to be getting notifications and some of them aren't.
I mean, we could also like make it flip a switch. I'm saying depending on GM's preference.
True.
I'm in favor of like adding as much flexibility to the system as possible.
I am too.
Yeah.
These are just like oversights I'm thinking we might run into.
But yeah, I can see where you're going with that.
I like the idea personally of baking that risk level into the module building. So when you play the module, it's set so that if somebody finds that they want it to move really fast and not have it, they could just turn it off all the time. And if somebody else wants to be very cautious, lots of discussion, there could be a lot of high risk decisions where people can veto.
Yeah, I feel like that would be like I feel like that's a good game master tool we should implement, because if they want to take their story like serious and they don't want you to blow through it like and they want you to actually think, then they'll have a lot of these risk preferences fairly high.
Like a more serious role-playing game, for lack of a better term. Let's say it's more of like a realism focus.
If it's more for fun or whatever, a lot of these
Yeah.
might not be, they'll all be 1s or 2s, and the occasional very rare 3. But if it's more serious, there will be way more 2s and 3s going on, and 1s will be peppered in there every now and then.
Yeah.
And the problem that I'm thinking might arise is that a lot of people that have their settings at 1 are going to be held up by the people that have all theirs like turned up. So they're getting a lot of prompts and stuff to like, hey, like this is risky. Do you want to do this? And everyone else is like, what's the big deal? Why is it taking so long?
Yeah, we're buying bread. Like, what's the?
Yeah. So that's something I can see being an issue. So that's why I think we should decide. Do we want to prioritize the player's setting, or do we want to prioritize the module setting of like their risk thresholds?
Do the players even need it? I mean,
True.
that's another question. Can it just
Is
be
it-
set to the module?
Yeah.
But what if you're sharing modules? Let's say like you share a module with somebody, and like the players it was written for, like do not, let's say in this example, do not have brain injuries or physical disabilities or impairments or anything like that, right?
Uh-huh.
And then the players that are playing this module who they shared it with have some things like that. They might need the risk settings changed. Would you just change it for the actual entire module, or do you have it per player?
Well, I think what we talked about with the risk setting is what it primarily does is give the option to veto a choice. So I don't think it would necessarily like if you have risk settings turned on, the other players get a chance to veto your choice when you make a choice, and if it's low, they don't. You know what I mean?
Kind of.
It's possible what we could do is have everyone put in their preferred. I mean, I don't know. This isn't a great solution, but it's a possibility. Everyone puts in their preferred. I'd like to be able to object to anything rated 2 or higher. And then you look at what like the lowest objection is and automatically set everyone's to that. And that way it would be, you'd be looking at, this person needs the ability to object to more stuff. So everyone has that ability, even if they don't use it. But it's still not perfect because it's still kind of messing with everyone's settings.
I was
There's
thinking
something
about doing the average, but I realized what if someone puts the risk like almost at nothing, then we have it's kind of like when you
Mhm.
calculate net worth of the U.S. and you throw Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk in there, that really messes up your average.
Yeah.
Well, here's the solution to both problems. Why don't we just, when they join a game, why don't we just have the default be on 2? Like 2 is going to be like you're going to get a prompt. But if they don't want to change it, or if they don't want that to happen, they can just easily change it. Like we'll just have 3 boxes, 3, 2, and 1, and we'll just be like, oh, you don't want any? Click 1. But the default's 2. If you want more, you can click 3. There you go. So maybe that's how we should do it. Like just leave it on a default, and if people want it a different
They have
way,
the
they can
tool set
change
to
it.
change it
Yeah.
and the user preferences.
Mm-hmm.
That seems all right to me. And like it could also be up to like the module creator what their default is as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what.
And then if the players are like, okay, well, we're the ones playing the game, we'd like to modify this for everybody's, enjoyment, then that's also up to the DM. And if they're okay with it, they can change it to what they prefer.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think that's more flexible that way.
I like that idea.
Okay. So then,
You could also like a good example is like a lot of modules for like like D&D or like for this level player. You could also put that on your module when you list it, like when you share it. You could also put the acceptance rating or for the decisions.
true. Yeah. That could be something people put in their descriptions of their modules that they're hosting. That hey, this is for experienced players, or
For experienced players, high risk, and it would say why.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, it's a good thing we probably talked about that problem now. But I don't think there's any reason to change it here. So what should we do after they break out and discuss?
They probably, after the discussion, they'll need to make the choice again because if it's changed, they'll have to select the other option.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we should make an arrow and make that go all the way back to user makes a game decision, or do we just want to make it start like all completely over, where we start opting people out and stuff again? Actually, maybe we shouldn't do that because people have already opted out. We already know who opted out and they don't want to do this. So
Yeah, I don't think we should loop it back to user makes game decision because that would put them through another round of objections. I think that once you've gone through one round of objections, we shouldn't allow them to be in an endless loop of objecting.
You would just call the process again once it's the end of the round.
Yeah, we just want it to be like you make the decision now after you've had a chance to discuss, and whatever the decision is, you have to live with it, even if you know you didn't agree with it.
Okay, I'm curious what like Hawk thinks about it because he's got more of the kind of like therapeutic mindset that we kind of lack right now. So kind of
We can make a note of that.
yeah, I'd write like a note right there. Like think of like the therapeutic ramifications of like forcing someone into something like that. Well, it's not technically forcing. They had a chance to say they don't like that, and they'll be sitting out anyway. So.
Like to more like to witness that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my concern is that if you get someone who's really like antagonistic, who is in charge of making the choice for that round, and they make a choice that no one agrees with and everyone objects, even after discussion, they might still make that problematic choice because that's, like the archetype that they're playing into. And so the reason I don't want it to continue looping is that if that person is like, okay, well, I'm going to make that choice anyway, people are still going to object and you're just going to be launched into that cycle, which I don't think is particularly
Like, someone
ideal.
could be forceful about their choice over and over and over.
Yeah, you don't, because all that's going to do is encourage the same arguments to happen, and it's just going to, while making a bad choice that people don't agree with is going to cause issues within the group, it's going to be a lot less severe than if you are continually being like, hey, please don't make this choice. I'm going to do it anyway. Like, it's...
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun.
All right, yeah, that's probably a better idea.
Okay.
We're trying to make some big decisions with this process. I think we were thinking of something with that risk threshold thing.
Okay, what's the issue?
Zach, didn't you come up with the idea of the default thing?
Yeah, so for the risk threshold thing, I thought we might run into a problem with people having different settings for the risk threshold, and then having like the game, like the actual module, be set for another one. Like, do we want to prioritize the module's risk threshold or the players? And because I see a problem where like some players may be getting a lot more prompts, and some of them are just kind of like, "Yo, man, let's get a move on. I
Go
don't
with the flow."
Yeah, I want to go with the flow. I want to keep moving.
Yeah,
And so,
but yeah, we wanted individuals to have a choice of how often they're prompted, right? We want that to be a choice for each player. We can certainly say certain module has a higher overall risk. That's a whole other
Like,
topic.
Experience module might have this rating.
Yeah. I mean, we might let's say we have a Call of Cthulhu type module, right? A horror genre,
yeah,
right?
that's exactly what I was.
Yeah, we pick and it's going to have a higher risk number over and over and over again. But I think the players should get to decide how much they're going to be flagged, and there's two ways we can do this. One is we prompt them at the beginning, which we should always do. Say, okay,
Yeah,
by the way,
that's a
as you're setting up
solution I came up with.
for this campaign, for this adventure, this excuse me, what do you want to set your risk threshold to? For objecting as far as risks. However the text is, we can work that out later. That's all UI stuff later. But that at the beginning of joining the game, they're prompted to, and basically maybe we should do that every time they join a game, so they can be coming back to the same game, and we can have a prompt that just says, you have your objection risk threshold set to this. Keep it the same, or do you want to change it?
Yeah, that's one of the
sounds pretty
solutions. That's one
Okay.
of the solutions I brought up. Is like when they first join a module or a game, we'll have it like on a default setting, but it'll be like 2 or 3 boxes, and like you can change it right there. It's one click.
Yeah, the default setting should be always prompt initially, but we can have a little text below that says, if you don't want to see this every time, set this risk threshold to whatever
I was thinking
in that prompt.
like the default would be obviously set by the module creator, but the DM and like the players could discuss like, okay, I'm okay with you having like the option of like, hey, if you want to skip these choices above this threshold I already set, or
So
not
this is a topic of consent, and we always want to err on the side of overly cautious initially and letting the individual decide what they're comfortable with. So we always want it to, by default, give them the chance to object to everything, but make it very clear, A, when they first join the game, do you want to change your default threshold? If you don't understand what this means, leave the default, which is going to be the most objections. But then every time the objection pops up, there's a little bit of side text that just says, by the way, if you don't want to get this for everything, here's the different ratings, go ahead and pick a number, and boom, you won't get as many of these. And so that can happen every time it's popping up. There's a little side text that just explains if this is annoying you, just change your setting now to make that easy for them to do. Does that work for everybody?
sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking like in my head, it'd be more up to the game master.
That's the risk level of the adventure.
Yeah, like if they want to make it super dangerous,
That's fine. Yeah, but the players need to decide when they get the objection prompt. That's a player decision, not a GM decision.
like if the whole campaign, like you said, is really dangerous, and they might just
So let's use like our game tier rating. You guys all familiar with our game tier ratings? All right, let me pull this up because you guys really need to know about this if not everybody's familiar with this. It's still a work in progress, but it's an important one. Come on. All right, game tiers. Whoops, if I could spell it correctly. Okay, good. There it is. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you the link, and I'm going to screen share it. If you want to stop screen sharing for a moment, Dario, so everybody can see what I'm going to share here in a moment. Okay. Tab. Game tiers. All right. So this is how we've been trying, and we don't want it to be exactly like, P, G, G, all of that. We don't want it to be something that it's exclusionary. We just want it to be advisory. We don't want it to be as dramatic as the video game warnings and all that. We want people to look at things in context. And basically, we look at tier 1 games are the safest and most accessible for the widest population. So No Thank You Evil is right, ages 4 or 5 on up. That's it's an easy, the complexity is low. It isn't just about like the violence or anything like that. It's complexity, ease of use, learning curve, commitments of duration. All those things are taken into account in figuring this out. I haven't nailed down an exact formula. It's something I keep revising and trying to improve. Someday I hope to actually have a written algorithm for this, but for now it's a little bit more gut feel based on experience. Over time I hope to make it a proper assessment tool. As we develop the activity assessment tool to better evaluate role-playing games, we'll have an actual form that you fill out that helps you determine your game tier. But you see how tier 1 is No Thank You Evil. Tier 2 we have BECME, D&D. And so, the game could be violent, not violent, depends on how you play. The game itself's not very gory or graphics. The One Ring role-playing game, because it has great behavior guidance, is only a tier 2 game, even though the complexity is higher. It really is, assume we're working with higher risk populations is part of what these tiers assume. So with higher risk populations, we do not recommend D&D for the higher risk populations, straight D&D 5th edition, for example. We get up to tier 3 with BFRPG with some variations. We start getting into BECME, Doctor Who, Adventures in Middle-earth. Original D&D is okay. BX D&D and Fate are okay depending on the setting. Tier 4, we get into Top Secret, depending again how it's played. Certain specific BFRPG adventures, BECME at a higher level, getting into 1st and 2nd edition AD&D because they still have strong alignment consequences when you violate alignment, and specific Fate versions. And this list is always being added and updated. Tier 5 is when we finally get to D&D 5th edition, because it's lacking behavior guidance ever since 3rd edition onward, basically. The consequences for playing evil and stuff like that are really minimal as far as the game system's concerned. And it's even on par now with Call of Cthulhu 7th edition, because Call of Cthulhu has consequences for not making the right choices, even though it doesn't exactly have the behavior guidance. So that kind of gives you an idea of these tiers. So we can use this as a shorthand. It goes all the way up to tier 10, which has the D&D 3rd edition book of erotic fantasy, and then also the other book of Vile Darkness for D&D by Monty Cook Games. Hardcore stuff in there, right? That's really hardcore. It is.
Darkness.
Both books are really hardcore. It's all
doom.
yeah. Tier 9 is Vampire the Masquerade. That tells you how hardcore these supplements are for D&D, if it's higher risk than Vampire the Masquerade.
I'm trying to figure out, Hawk, for like example, so I'm understanding a system like this.
Yeah.
I'm trying to fit, like, let's say, like the cyberpunk role-playing game, like 2020 Red, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like trying to figure out where that would be, because that's like
It's going to be high risk. It's going to be a high risk
like
game.
a 6 or a 7, isn't it? 'Cause that's like
Easy.
way harder combat than like second
Yeah.
edition.
Well, I mean, so you're talking about the role-playing tabletop game or the video game?
No, the role-playing game, like the one, like 2020.
I do not.
27.
Yeah, I haven't seen the tabletop role-playing game for it. The old cyberpunk. Well, yeah, it had complexity. I mean, if you look at Rollmaster.
Friday Night Firefight was really.
Yeah, it's probably in the. So you look at Rollmaster, GURPS, Heroes. Those are all complex systems. So we put that at a 6. You'll notice we have Kids on Bikes at a 6, and that surprises a lot of people. Do you guys know why?
I've never heard of that.
It's a great game. It's actually a lightweight rule system as far as the core play, but there's no real ready to play. It's very much about building an entire town. It's kind of, think Goonies. It's basically based on 1980s movies like Goonies.
So like Goonies, The Outsiders, that kind of like.
Yeah, exactly.
And stuff. That's awesome.
It's an awesome game. The other one is, which is even higher than this, is Bubble Gumshoe, which is also a lightweight system, but it actually takes on, it's for juveniles, and it's for junior high through high school. And you play in your town at your local school, but it deals with things like date rape and stuff being, like all the stuff that junior high school kids deal with. It can be some heavy topics. It's basically a Hardy Boys Nancy Drew Mysteries, not the new Nancy Drew that's got supernatural, the old original books that do not have supernatural aspects. It's, George's bike has been stolen. We need to find out who did it. And you're on you're a teenage detective basically trying to figure out who stole George's bike and stuff, right? Or who's running for school election and the scandals there. But it's all school, junior high, high school level stuff. It's a great game, but in order to play it, you have to build your school. Same thing with Kids on Bikes. You have to build your town. There's no like.
That has some really dark stuff going on in it.
And Bubble Gumshoe can get real dark real fast. So it's wonderful from a therapeutic perspective if you have the training. But with a high risk population, you got to be really careful about the topics you go with. And so the game, and so that's why we put those at a higher tier, is because it's not appropriate at like a standard community center for kids. Just not appropriate. You can modify it. Remember, this is the game as is. There's nothing that doesn't say you can't modify any of these. D&D 5th edition to have, add, behavior guidance rules, add the Adventures of Middle-earth behavior guidance rules, etc. Because you'll notice Adventures of Middle-earth is only a tier 3, which is D&D 5th edition, but it has the One Ring role-playing game behavior guidance, and the One Ring role-playing game is tier 2. So that makes D&D 5th edition go from a 6 down to a 3, basically, because of all the behavior guidance that's added. So does that help you guys have some ideas? So when we're talking about a threshold, that's kind of the threshold we're talking about, it from a 1 to a 10 in that ballpark. Does that help give you guys a little bit of orientation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that would be what we would want to work out programmatically somehow. Is okay, it's a level 3 risk to pull the lever versus a level 1 risk, to just make a choice of going left or right. There's no real risk. I don't need to be popped up to object. I'm just going to go with the flow. No big deal. But the lever, because we know that there was some info about that, even if the player may have missed it, we're going to flag that as potentially maybe a level 5 risk factor, because if you make the wrong choice, maybe something bad will happen that could have been averted directly by choosing the other lever. That's why everybody went, wait. So we'll have to work out those details later, but does that at least help you in a conceptual perspective as far as this flow chart? Get that worked out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the next problem we were having is once we break out to like the group discussion and chat, what do we want them to do after that? Do we want them to loop back to continue a choice?
So
or
pull
do
the
we want
diagram
them-
back up, please, Dario.
Yeah, and then or do we want this to just be sort of like a pseudo rest period? Do we want them to just go back to a rest period?
We were going to give it a chance to do a break, the option, and I thought it was in the flow chart, an option to break out into a discussion.
It is.
Yeah.
That's what, and we're trying to decide where do we go. What do we want to do with the players after that? After the
Okay.
entire discussion stuff.
So break out to group discussion chat. Okay. So you're right. So now that they come back from that chat, we just need to figure out which line they come back in, because we want it to still be the same person making a choice. We don't want the person wanting to make a choice to lose making the choice.
Yeah, and so Valerie said that if we looped it back to user makes game decision again, then we have the potential risk to
Infinite
this
loop.
process. Yeah, keeps
Infinite
happening
loop.
over and
Yeah.
over because they don't
No,
wanna change their mind.
we have to create a similar but different subroutine, use older parlance here, that mirrors some of the older choices but is slightly different now because some people may have opted out of that action. So this is the part we had not finished last week. So let's make a box, a choice box coming out of, so we got breakout to group. We'll put above it a triangle, a diamond that says participate in selection. And
So
so at this point, we've had a conversation. We've tried to convince. Okay. Set that above. Break the arrow off there. Set that above. That will be a choice, but it's too soon. That's a step too soon. The other one we want to have is make same decision or change choice.
Yeah.
That's
So
what we
one of
need.
My
Yeah.
ideas was to loop back to continue a choice because, like, with that if
Right. We're not
they-
going to loop back to the first flow since we've broken out of that subroutine. We now have a
Yeah.
separate, similar but slightly different subroutine. So the one when we come back from the group is continue with same choice. Continue with same choice? Question mark. If it's yes, then we go to the box. Other players participate in choice, so it's another diamond.
So is this us giving like players that have already opted out a chance to veto this decision, or
Not a veto, it's for their character not to participate in the
Okay.
choice that is being made. So let's say we've got this lever situation and Trevor chose to pull the left lever. And we do a breakout and everybody goes, Trevor, don't pull the left lever, here's the reason why. And Trevor says, nah, I'm still going to pull the left lever. I want to pull the left lever and see what happens. And some of the other players are like, yeah, I'm kind of curious to see. I know he said not to do it, but I want to see. And so the other players are going, no, I'm going to listen to the guy. I want to stand back, right? I do not want to be involved with this. I'm stepping back. I'm not going to be involved. You guys go ahead and you can deal with the consequences. I'm gonna wait and see. And so, or we go back to the stabbing example of the guy who was hanging. In that example, some people wanted to go ahead and run up and stab him, and some people wanted to just, stand back or run away, and some people wanted to run up and attack the goblins. We want to keep this just two choices for the moment for our logic because it's going to get too complicated. So it was either go run up and stab the guy or don't go up and stab the guy. And some people did not want to go up and stab the guy. So they would just stay there at the door, and let's say the guy was alive rather than dead. those who said, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go with the decision to stab the guy, get whatever shadow points for killing a prisoner. And the ones who stayed at the door don't get the shadow points, right? And then we resume normal gameplay from there. Even though some of you stayed at the door and some of you ran up and stabbed, you're still a group. And again, we'll have to hammer out these details. That's why we're flowcharting these use cases. Okay, so continue the same choice, yes. Other players participate in choice. So then from that, if they say yes, then that is where it loops, where it goes to 14A. So if they say yes, that goes all the way down to the bottom there at 14A. Okay, we'll play with that in a minute. We've got the idea. Okay, back at the diamond, the choice diamond of continue with same choice. If they say no, we're going to branch out the top there. And we're going to have to make a little more room. I would probably have that yes coming out of other players participate in choice, and I would probably make that come out the bottom of that decision diamond. There you go. All right. Meanwhile, and then I'd bring that diamond down a little bit so we've got room to get around it.
This one?
Yeah. We'll have to start putting numbers on these at some point again. Okay, the right-hand diamond can stay the same. The left-hand diamond is going to need to come down, and we'll just have to have an arrow that moves around a little bit. Yeah, just bring that one down. Down, 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 down. There you go. That's good. There we go. All right, so meanwhile, continue with same choice, no. So we're going to have a process that says PC does not participate in choice.
Where from?
This is
one?
from the, continue with same choice out the top. We're going to have a little process box, and it's going to say PC, and this is going to be the box, the rectangle with the 2 lines on the side. That's a process box. So it's going to see PC does not participate in choice. Okay, and they're going to then have an arrow coming out the side of that process box and feed over to 14A, I guess, because we still have to kind of work out how all that gameplay works. But like because we've still got to work out where all the actions get resolved, and that's that whole temporary exclusion sub process. That's why it's all kind of coming back to there, but it's parallel to the other 14A choice. So they're going to get put in an array or whatever that's going to say, this PC is not going to have these consequences, or is going to have these consequences of no shadow or hero or whatever, right? It's going to be different than the rest of the group. All right, and then for, it says other players participate in, so actually so that doesn't actually need to be a diamond after all. It says other players participate in choice. That should just be a result box. That can just be just a regular square. And I see that we're running over on our time here, but we're solving important issues here. Okay, so playing through that, Trevor wanted to go ahead and pull the left lever. So of everybody here, I see that, was it Luke who said he had to step out? So Trevor,
Yeah, right.
Trevor, let's just assume for the moment you're still going. So Trevor wanted to pull the left lever. Everybody else, or at least some of you, objected, and so that, let's see, okay, so it goes from if any PCs object. I can't read that. Can you zoom in just a little bit?
Where? Where at?
14B, I can't read the text. I'm getting old. There we go. Decision is shown, or I guess decider is shown the number of objections. I know decider is not good grammar. That's a total Bush Jr. thing, but oh well. Decision maker. It was supposed to be decision maker. That was it. The decider. I can't say nuclear. He's a decider. All right. The decision maker is shown the number of objections. Okay, so something between 14B and that diamond that's not quite right.
Yeah, I think it's right.
Well, it goes with continue with choice. That's the decision maker continuing with choice. We haven't had to break out discussion. So the problem is he could short circuit, the decision maker could just short circuit and ignore the objections and drag the people objecting along and just go ahead and go with the decision. We don't want that to happen. So what it should be is remove that arrow going straight from 14B up to that decision. So from 14B to continue with choice, just get rid of that arrow going up. Good. Okay, so to the right of that little process, decision maker is shown number of objections. Let's see. There was a reason we had that short circuit. I can't remember what it was. There was something. What was it? Be right back. I need to make a call. Okay. So let's go to prompted to go. Let's see. Want to start a breakout conversation. So a diamond. Let's do a choice diamond. Do you want to start a group discussion? And if you can scroll to the right a little so I can see that better because I've got the overlay in the way. Thank you. Okay, do you want to start a group discussion? And the decision maker could decide not to participate in that discussion. But others may decide to. So if you don't want to participate in the discussion, so if we say no, then it's going to go straight to continue with choice question mark. So, okay, so let's, go ahead and put that there. Then let's get rid of the no that goes from the continue with choice that goes up to breakout group. Remove that arrow because we're going to put it in a different location. But the arrow coming out of do you want to start group discussion, have that and have that be a no, goes into the right side of continue with choice question mark. We're going to have to add a wait queue for waiting for the others, but that we can get to that. Okay, yeah, there you go. And then to the right of do you want to start a group discussion, say yes, and bring that up to breakout to group discussion process. So we can call that decision diamond there 15 if we want. Oops. There we go. All right, so let's look at that. So decision maker is shown the number of objections. Do you want to start a group discussion? No. That could be the decision maker, that could be the other players, that's up to their choice. They'll be prompted if they want to join a group discussion. The decision maker could go ahead and continue with choice. We will need to put, so those three coming into 14A, not the bottom three, but the three coming in from the right side, we should probably put some kind of buffer where all three of them are, which is kind of the weight buffer while others have their conversation. Does that make sense? Have I lost you?
What kind of box?
Oh goodness, I forget which one's a good buffer one. Let's go with, it's just a process. Let's just make it a process. So we'll put a process there between 14A and those three arrows coming from the right. And all three of those arrows will feed into the right-hand side of that process box. And then it'll come out of that process box to 14A.
Hey, Hawk.
Yeah, you got to go?
No.
Okay.
No. I was gonna ask. Maybe next session. I'm seeing a lot of. We were talking about the user preferences and stuff a lot today.
Yeah.
Maybe we should take a look into what all we need for that. Maybe next session.
All right.
Just like a list of like every single parameter we can think of. Or like
Well, that's
flowchart.
gonna evolve over time. If you
Yeah.
want, in the chat room, go ahead and start posting suggestions of what config options you think should be in there. And then Valerie, if you want to post what you have so far from our notes in there to help them with the start. that would
Those
be it.
are gameplay preferences, not like
Yes.
high, medium, low.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Gameplay style preferences. Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
Good. Yeah. So
That'll
let's.
probably be another thing. then.
Yeah, but let's have that in the chat room, and then we can build on that over time. Okay, good. And then coming out of the buffer, it goes to 14A. Or I guess it could be weight Q, buffer weight Q. Probably weight Q would probably be a better word. What do you guys think? Term. Does that make more sense to everybody?
Yeah. I think
Okay.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. So the key here
How do you
is
spell
that
Q?
you got it. QUEUE.
Q-U-E-U. Wait, what?
QUEUE. There you go. That's it.
Weird.
That's it. There's like Q stick, which is CUE, but this is waiting in the queue. All right.
Okay.
So that's the wait queue. Does that make sense to everybody? And let me look at it. Okay. Do you want to start a group discussion? No. Continue. Oh, hey, come back. Thank you. Continue with choice. Yes. All right. Well, let's wait in the queue because if anybody said, yes, I want to start a group discussion, we can't pull the trigger on it yet. You have decided your PC is going to just go ahead regardless of what everybody else says. So you've made that decision. Fine. You're waiting in the queue. The computer now knows what your PC's choice is. Meanwhile, others have gone off into the breakout to group discussion and they're trying to debate the merits. Once they finish that discussion, do you want to continue with the same choice? Yes. I guess I just say PC participates in choice. Sorry. Change that other players participate in choice to PC participates in choice. All right, and then if we go the other way, continue with same choice, no. PC does not participate in choice. And so in that wait queue buffer, that top arrow is going to have a no just above it just to help keep track. So those three arrows coming in, there's going to be a no right above that top arrow going into the wait queue. Just some text. Does that make sense to everybody now? Does that kind of look like it flows okay?
Yeah, it looks like it covers everything so far.
So what we'll do next week is we're gonna role play through this again, where each of you are gonna give me. I'm gonna write down. I'm gonna pretend to be the buffer, and I'm gonna write down those who agree with Trevor's choice at the beginning. Then we will see who wants to have a discussion versus who does not. Do not have a discussion about it before. We want to role play simulate this environment. Some of you may say, you know what, I don't really care. I just want to go for it. Let's move on. So I'll just go ahead and continue with choice. But I do want at least two of you to say, you know what, I actually want to have a discussion. We go to discussion. That's your chance to whoever's in that discussion to change their mind. Now, if Trevor, who's the decision maker, does not go to that discussion queue, that will not change Trevor's choice. but it will give you, the individual PC, the option to reduce the consequences or avoid the consequences of Trevor's choice. Does that feel right to everybody? That way, you're having a say, but it's not about the tyranny of the majority. You used to get to control your PC in this riskier situation. Does that feel good for everybody?
Yep. Yep, that sounds like it worked.
It's a convoluted way to avoid, the easier solution would be a vote system or something, but I really want people to be able to have a little bit of that autonomy while still working with a limited menu option and such. So, all right. Anything else, Valerie? I know we're running a little bit over here, but anything else we need to hurry on?
I have one short thing.
Okay, go ahead.
It's not discussion for next week. It's just something that is going to be starting since we're doing hiring. Are any of you guys interested in being involved in the process and helping vet candidates at all?
We could use the help.
Yeah,
We have a lot of candidates, and Valerie and we could all use the help.
If anyone has experience with Unreal, I could take a look at them because that's like my game engine I'm familiar with. Even if we aren't using it, just to see because I can understand where their skills are coming from. You know what I'm saying? I'd like the help.
Okay, so yeah, so just go ahead and post your names in the text chat here in Jitsi if you're willing to help with the first level vetting process to help Valerie with the load on that. That would be great. And then what'll happen is after you interview them, you give Valerie your feedback and recommendations. And then Valerie, you decide if you want to do a second interview or if you want to just go ahead and give them an offer and onboard them.
Okay.
So that'll help lighten your load as far as interviews.
Okay.
Great.
So for you guys, I'll send you emails as we get candidates and stuff. Hawk, I sent you, Danielle, and John an email with a bunch of questions about how we handle hiring process as a whole, just whenever you get around to it.
Okay. Will do. And eventually a lot of that's going to get handed off to this new volunteer coordinator team. We're kind of filling in the gaps for now.
Also,
But,
real
yes.
quick, Valerie.
Uh-huh.
Wednesdays and Saturdays are my better days because since I started doing Grubhub during school, the rest of the days I'm doing that.
Okay.
So like Wednesday or Saturday would be a better day to have me help you guys.
Perfect,
Okay.
because Wednesdays is when we do most of our interviewing and administrative stuff. So, but you'll have to work with whatever Valerie's schedule is on that.
Okay. Well, I'm unemployed right now, so I don't have a schedule.
Oh. Okay, I'll keep that in mind if I get this other gig and they need more people to add to the team. I'll keep that in mind.
Okay.
So, and that goes for all of you. It's always easier to hire people than to bring in a whole bunch of new strangers. So, if opportunities present, it's a company out of India, and be warned if there is interest in adding to the team, they expect everybody to put in a minimum of 60 hours a week.
Oh wow.
So that's the industry standard. That's just the way it goes. They don't have any concept of life-work balance.
40 hours for standard in the US? I'm just confused how much.
Yeah,
it is.
40
Okay.
standard.
I was just trying to see what the context
40s is the U.S. standard
That's like
before
9
you
to
have to
5.
pay overtime. But if you are a salaried employee, as long as you're above a certain threshold of income per year, employers can ignore the 40-hour-a-week overtime requirement if you accept salary. So that's the trade-off. But the nice thing about salary is it's a steady income. You can count on how much money you're going to make each month, right? Your paycheck is steady, and then you may have bonuses that come in. So the nice thing about salary is it makes it a lot easier to budget your annual income and everything. I have preferred salary most of the time, but I've done lots of contracted hourly work. I've rarely been an hourly employee in tech. Whenever it's been tech, most of the time I've been salary, except for when I was a PC build tech, I was hourly. And so, when you start getting in the 6-digit income range, it's like, okay, yeah, it's a lot of hours, but when you're making 180K, all right, I'll live. It's like still making pretty good pay, and all right, and it tends to be on and off, right? The advantage of it being salary is the employer, their budget is more predictable, and so they can look at a project and not blow up the financial budget, even though sometimes the hours might have some crunch time. So you'll have a project for like 2.0, and you'll get near crunch time, and you're only working 40 hours a week, and then we're not quite making the deadline, and for a few weeks everybody's got to put in 60 hours a week. Then you get over to the deadline, finish it, and you get back to 40 hours a week or 30 hours a week. And the flip side is sometimes you only work 20, 30 hours a week, but you still make the full income you would have made, even though things might be a little slow in the company. The danger if it stays that way too long is, of course, they got to lay people off. But it just keeps your income steady. So there's pros and cons.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yep, we got to go. We got to go.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks for everything.
Sounds good. Bye.
Take care.
Everybody, have a good day.
And those of you watching the stream, remember RPG Research is a 501c3 nonprofit research and human services organization studying the effects of all role-playing game formats for their potential to help improve lives around the world. You can donate at rpgresearch.com/donate. Lots of options there. Or you can volunteer at rpgresearch.com/volunteer, and we have lots of options there. I've got to get going. We've got our Tolkien Society coming up here at 1 o'clock. That'll be at the youtube.com/Tolkien Scholars stream. You can learn more at tolkienscholars.org. That goes from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific time. Wherever you may be well, happy gaming, and Namarie.